much for making time for this. I'd like Jonathan Kanter to join me here. Jonathan, please. We're going to have a fireside. I don't quite have a fireplace crackling in the background, but we'll make do.
I was told there was going to be a fireplace.
Yes, I sought in vain for one, but there wasn't one that was suitable. Yes, absolutely. No, let me just, of course, introduce Teddy Downey, who is the lead of the Capital Forum, and he is going to say a few words to introduce us.
Well, thank you so much, Christina. I'm Teddy Downey, CEO and executive editor at the Capital Forum. For those not familiar with my company, we are the premier provider of investigative antitrust news and legal analysis. And before I introduce the chat, I really wanted to thank Christina. It's an honor to support the conference, which I think is and will be remembered as a seminal moment in the history of competition policy and how the world thinks about debates and lays out a strategic vision for political economy. And I admire Christina so much for her curiosity, her interest in ideas, her incredible group of friends, and her fearlessness and willingness to challenge her own profession, which is she's an incredible person and a force of nature. And I'm really grateful to associate the Capital Forum with her and this amazing conference. And so thank you so much. And let's give Christina a round of applause. And AAG Jonathan really needs no introduction. I'm not going to read you his bio. You can DuckDuckGo it. But I will quickly say that having met him and getting to know him as a lawyer before he was AAG and as a law enforcer now, I can confidently say this about him. He's a student of history. He is rigorous. He is courageous. And he is not deterred by corporate power and influence. He's also committed to putting the interests of everyday citizens at the center of his vision for enforcement. And one of the ways I like to see that happen is how his attempts to demystify the language of antitrust, take it away from economists and fancy lawyers. I'm sure, I mean, you guys are great, but he's returning that language to the people. And I see, it's been remarked that there are a lot of young people and new faces here, and it's incredible what he's done to bring that language and make it more accessible. And he even says it's helping him win in court, which is also impressive. And I'm just really excited to hear what he has to say in this conversation with Christina. And please give AAG Jonathan and Christina a welcome.
Thank you so much, Teddy. So actually, I wanted to take some of what you said as a jumping off point. You talked about language, and we heard this morning a lot of discussion around power. We heard conversation with judges, but you, Jonathan, have really owned a new language in this space. Since you came into your position, there's been a real shift in not just in the narrative, but also in the language which is being used to it. Of course, we'll talk about the new merger guidelines, which are in some sense a culmination of that kind of process. But you use language like democracy, for example, and power. You talk about the need to actually position cases and issues in front of judges in a different way. Tell us about how you think of that.
Sure, and first of all, thank you, Teddy, thank you, Christina, for having me. It's just a pleasure to be here and to see so many friends and colleagues, and this is just an extraordinary exchange of ideas, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. Changing the language of antitrust, that is part of our core mission. And so what does that mean? Well, for most of my career, antitrust was the domain of an insular few. We used terms that were exclusionary. We used terms that made it difficult for people with real life experiences, with real on the ground, real life expertise to participate. And so by changing the language of antitrust, we're actually going back to the roots of antitrust enforcement. It was a law that was passed, laws that were passed to protect people. They were passed to protect farmers. They were passed to protect small business owners, citizens who cared about a competitive economy because it mattered to their liberty. And these are principles that we have to emphasize, but we can't invite the public to participate if we use language, if we use concepts the public can't access. And so we've changed. It doesn't mean we're any less rigorous. It doesn't mean we're any less sophisticated. It just means that we're opening up the conversation. I think, important part of that is getting, for me, out of Washington and talking to people about their experiences. And so if you indulge me, I think to one of many trips, but had an opportunity to sit down with the farming community and talk to family farmers in the middle of the United States. And didn't just sit down with the farmers, sat down with the people in those local small communities, rural communities, the local pharmacist, the local bookstore owner, the grocery store marketplace owner, someone who works food service at a local hospital, community hospital that got acquired. And what you realize is that the concentration of power in these communities, it doesn't just affect the ability of a farmer to get a reasonable return on investment for her livestock. It affects those entire communities. It affects the local newspaper, which is critical to the political discourse and our democracy and a local economy. These are things that are foundational. But the amazing thing about it is when you talk to these people, they understand what's going on. And they use words like power. They use words like democracy. And they have real important perspectives to offer. And we can learn a lot from them. We just need to invite them into the conversation.
I'm going to share my own little episode about you, which I think is a testimony that this language is coming through. I was once standing not too long ago on a street corner in DC with Jonathan after a conference, and this stranger approached Jonathan. I thought, oh my God, where is security? And he said, "You're Jonathan Kanter." I thought, oh my God, a crank. And he said, "I'm a pharmacist from somewhere." He said, "I think you and Lina Khan are doing God's work," which was remarkable from a complete stranger in the middle of the street. So I think this struck me as testimony that this is somehow percolating through. I mentioned the guidelines. It's, of course, a hugely important statement of the shift in thinking. Why did you feel you needed to, well, why is obvious, but what is the kind of the salient effect of these guidelines in your view?
I think there are two core principles. First is rule of law, right? Antitrust is in the United States is law enforcement. It's not regulation. We are not regulating companies. We are not telling people how to run their businesses. We are simply saying, does your merger violate Section 7 of the Clayton Act? It's a matter of law enforcement. And when you want to enforce the law, you need to start where? With the text of the statute. And then you need to go look at the cases, starting from the Supreme Court cases that interpret that statute. And that's how we built out the merger guidelines. It's a faithful representation of where the law stands. Now, of course, facts matter. And so as we sit here in 2024, as we were writing them in 2023, the facts on the ground look different today than they did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, certainly 50 years ago. The state of our economy has changed. It's transformed. The way people conduct business has changed and transformed. And so we need to meet the law where it is, and we need to meet the markets where they are, not how they might appear in a textbook.
And so you had this amazing victory just a few days back, a couple of weeks back, on JetBlue Sprint before the court. One of the tests of the guideline is going to be, of course, how they perform, how they will be received from judges in decision. But this recent judgment, which vindicated your case, appears to be again a sign that there is shift, there is change. The courts are hearing. Why is it this case so foundational for you?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, in terms of the guidelines, our goal is not to bring courts to the guidelines. It's to bring the guidelines to where the courts are. And I think by doing that, the principles and the guidelines resonate. They're just a representation of where the law stands today. And I think that, my view, that position has been validated in recent court decisions, and we hope that continues. The case that you mentioned, the airline case, was really important. It's important because antitrust law is about people. It's about citizens. And we brought that case because, and the court talked about this, and we talked about this in our trial. It can be expensive for a large family to take a vacation, to see a new place. It could be expensive for a university student to fly home to see her family for the holidays. These are real effects on real people. In our case, we focused on cost-conscious consumers, the people who care about airfare the most, people for whom a higher fare makes a difference. And the court understood that, and the court reinforced that and said this case was specifically to protect those citizens. And the court, interestingly, and this is really important, not talked about the oligopolistic structure of the market flowing from the years of consolidation. The court's opinion talked about how competition doesn't just affect the two companies that are merging, but it affects everyone else because it forces everyone to be better, everyone to offer better service, everyone to offer lower prices. These are foundational principles that were echoed in that decision, and we're really proud. I'm really proud of our team at the Department of Justice who did extraordinary work in that case and in so many others to succeed.
And it is also the first case, if I'm not mistaken, where really decades of airline consolidation has been effectively rolled back or at least opposed by a court.
Well, we've now brought two cases in the airline industry, and we won them both. And so, the way to fight monopolies is not by creating more monopolies. The way to fight concentration isn't by inviting more concentration. It's by preserving competition.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the AI sort of domain. It is a discussion we had a bit this morning, and we will pick up yet this afternoon. Certainly, I know that the department is interested in what implications are of AI as potentially accelerating, amplifying market power problems that are in the economy. Are you thinking about any specific intervention or action? We know the FTC has announced a study. Of course, you're sharing in some way with the FTC the responsibility of overlooking or overseeing the economy. So what are you thinking of potentially going forward as an area of action?
Yeah, let me take a step back. Obviously, at DOJ, we're a law enforcement agency, and our focus is on making sure that we are enforcing the law in this important space. To do that, we need to understand it. We also need to have the expertise, but we need to start demystifying AI. I think it's talked about in these very grand terms, almost as if it's this fictional technology. But the fact of the matter is, these are markets, and we need to think about it from the chip to the end user. Right, and so where is their consolidation? Where is their concentration? Where are their monopolistic practices? It could be in the chips. It could be in the data sets. It can be in the development and innovation on the algorithms. It can be in the distribution platforms and how you get them to end users. It could be in the platform technologies and the APIs that are used to help make some of that technology extensible. These are real issues that have real consequences. We've invested heavily, including in our own technology and technologists, to make sure we understand these issues at the appropriate level of sophistication and depth, to make sure that we have what it takes to ensure that we are enforcing the law, but also to start getting out of thinking about it as this one, again, almost inaccessible technology. the fact of the matter is, just like a factory can be used in lots of different parts of business, AI can and will be used in lots of different parts of business, lots of different industries, and there are going to be lots of different flavors and implementation. And it's extremely important that we start digging in and having a sophisticated, hands-on approach to how we think about these issues. Because the fact of the matter is, one of the realities about these kinds of markets is that they have massive feedback effects. And so the danger of these markets tipping, the danger of these markets becoming dominant choke points is perhaps even greater than in other types of markets, more traditional markets. And the impact on society here is so massive. And so we have to make sure that we are doing the work now at the front end to get out in front of these issues, to make sure that we are preserving competition.
Quite, and this was the point of my question, because you are engaged in two big cases, monopolization cases against Google that you're not going to talk about, but what that tells us is that the duration, the delay, the kind of resources that go exposed into this, presumably you've learned a lot from that experience and the difficulty of instructing and developing a case exposed in that way. To inform how you think about monopoly power and the intersection of monopoly power and AI.
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot, and we're constantly, incorporating lessons into our work. And certainly our technology cases have been an important jumping off point for us. But it's also about investing in the expertise. It's investing in our own technological tools that we can use to enforce the law. It's, again, the willingness to roll up our sleeves and saying, as law enforcers, when we see a violation of the law and the facts in the law support action, that we take it. And that we bring forward the urgency of now, so that if there are violations of the law, we are engaged, and we are engaging quickly enough to make a difference. And I think we are certainly very invested in that, and we have a lot of work underway at the Department of Justice Antitrust Division with respect to AI and competition, including numerous active investigations.
Let me go back to what we have been discussing at some length, never enough, this morning, this idea of intersecting areas of policy that are linked and related in some way. So even as recently as 4 years ago, antitrust conferences were about narrowly antitrust. Now you're at a conference, we are here at a conference in which we have Ambassador Tai, and we have Chair Chopra, and in addition to yourself and Lina, we had Commissioner for Justice. So we had a number of politicians from the parliament talking about this idea of bringing things together. We heard about the all-of-government approach, of course, at length. How do you see this need for a coordinated approach from your angle? There's some skepticism, as you heard this morning, like, we do antitrust over here in Europe, but this cannot be the answer, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that skepticism, frankly. I think or I'm not sure what skepticism you're referring to, I should say. I think, at least in the United States, President Biden has championed a whole-of-government approach, and that means thinking about competition policy broadly. So antitrust enforcement is an essential ingredient to competition policy. We are the law enforcement arm of the United States to make sure that the laws are being enforced and adhered to. But competition policy is something that should be considered and evaluated across the government. Many agencies in the United States have competition policy rules and statutes. Agencies promulgate rules, and it's important to make sure that competition and principles of competition are front and center when thinking about those kinds of issues as well. And that's one of the things I think that the executive order and our implementation of it, we're really proud to be a part of that at the DOJ, has been valuable and extends beyond the borders of our building. But in terms of what I get up to do every day, it's to enforce the law and to make sure that if There are violations of the law, and the facts in the law support action that we take action, and we vindicate the rights of the public, because the work we do is extremely important, again, not just to our economic well-being, but to our fundamental liberty.
The skepticism I'm referring to is that when I put together a conference like this, and I have you as a speaker, but also speakers from other walks of life, the reaction of what I call many is, but why does this matter? Is this not something extraneous to what we do? So that's the skepticism, and that's why it is important to have this conversation, because it is important for antitrust senior regulators like you to acknowledge you're not in a bubble. This is the message I'm passing on.
The way to address that is to get out of the bubble. And so, I've spent time, as I indicated, when you talk to people throughout the country, when you talk to business owners, when you talk to workers, when you talk to students, and I want to talk a little bit about that in a moment, they understand these issues, right? It doesn't require a lot of explanation. They understand why power, excessive concentration of power, can be a threat. They understand that it's not just about prices or output, but it's about freedom and liberty and opportunity. I've spent a lot of time over the last year visiting law schools and business schools. I've been to roughly 20 in less than a year. And I have conversations with students, and we sit in the room, and it's amazing. When I went to law school, I won't date myself, but it was in the 90s, and you had an antitrust speaker, you'd probably get a dozen folks in the room, many of whom were thinking about a career that might result in a lucrative job opportunity. When we go talk to these law schools, to the business schools, the rooms are full. Not unlike this room, people standing because there are no seats left. And they're there because they care. They care about these issues because they see the connection between antitrust enforcement and their future well-being. They see the connection between antitrust enforcement and opportunity. And from what I hear from these students, they equate opportunity and freedom. Right? That to them is, to those students, that's the American dream. To succeed on the merits of your own hard work, of your own innovation, and to have the freedom to express ideas and to grow and to thrive in a society, no matter where you come from, no matter what part of the country you live in. And the students understand this. And so people ask me, have we experienced a transition? Have we experienced an inflection point? I say, yes, but we're just at the beginning. Because those students, when they take over, they're going to do that without a lot of the baggage that we have from years of perhaps a misunderstood enforcement, or they come to it with a different set of principles and different life experiences that flow from financial crisis or flow from a pandemic, and they've seen the real world consequences of monopoly power, and they want to do something about it. And we're starting to see many of those folks employed at the Department of Justice Antitrust Division, and they're amazing.
I can relate to that because personal note, my daughter is at university in the US, and when I was invited to give a talk on antitrust to her class, just me, the class was packed, and the students were saying, do you actually know Jonathan Kanter? Do you actually know Lina Khan? There was a sense of incredible excitement in this class about even the indirect link that somehow I could gloat about. But it is an enthusiasm that was palpable. It's very true.
It is, and again, I think it flows from really the beginning of our conversation, which is when we talk about these issues in ways that allow people to participate, they participate. Yeah. They speak up and they speak out. And they have something to say. And it's our job to listen. And it's our job to make sure that we are enforcing the law with the interests of the public in mind, in doing so in the spirit of why the antitrust laws exist in the first place. Competitive economy is a free society, and the two go hand in hand, and it's extremely important that we don't forget that. That's what's at stake here.
Last question. I said at the beginning that this conference was intended to be forward-looking. What is the vision? We heard Barry and Rana put forward a cautious optimism about the next 4 years. Assuming that comes to pass, what would you like to think of your objectives in the next 4 years? What would you see as your vision?
So it's pretty simple, right? Like our job at the antitrust division is to, and I keep coming back to this, but it's to enforce the law. We're not studying, we're not pontificating. We are looking at the facts in the law. We are making sure that we act to bring cases and to put forward enforcement policies that not only resonate with the public, but that protect the public from the very dangers that our Congress and our laws ask us to, hold dear and to protect. And so, from my perspective, our objective is to, one, is make sure that we are enforcing the law faithfully. Two is that we are meeting the market where it is. And I think, again, going full circle, markets have changed. We've learned a lot. We've seen a lot. The world today is so different than it was 30 years ago. And again, and if we're going to be effective, we have to meet markets where they are and not where they once were.
This is a great note to end on, I think. Please join me in thanking Jonathan for his time and for being here. Thank you.